Hey guys, so the topic for this week is designer children. I guess I was supposed to go on Tuesday with my response, but I didn't just because I didn't really know what to say at the time. So I kind of just, I'm like, oh, I'll do this later. And then I didn't do it. So now I'm doing it. Um, but I still don't really know what I would say about it. Here, basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk, and there'll actually probably be more questions than answers, but I'll just be honest about how I feel, I guess, and the questions that I have. Um, there's a part of me that really loves the idea of designer children, just because there's a lot of stuff that I worry about for my future kids that they would have to deal with, stuff that I know is wrong with me or that runs in the family. Um, uh, One example, well, this is not necessarily something that runs in the family, but my one brother has Down syndrome, and my parents obviously they found out before they had him, but they had him as as he was, and they didn't, he wasn't tampered with, and he is how he is. Um, Now that's the thing that I think typically would, if you had complete control over your child before it was birthed, that you would try and get rid of, or to change. And the question is, most people would say that's not something you want your child to have. It's not something you want them to have to deal with, or that you want to have to deal with later. Um, and there's a lot of questions. It's for instance, is that really the best choice? Is that even your right? There's always the talk of playing God. Is that something that we should be doing? Um, and there's one side of the argument that parts I can definitely understand, where they're like, well, if we have the capability, why don't we do it? Like if we have the ability to make make a world which we think is better than the one we have now, why don't we use all the resources we have to make that happen? Um, and then there's another question that I thought of is, like, we use modern technology and medicine to combat diseases and mutations and things that happen to us after we're out of the womb. Like, we fight off diseases that could have killed us. Like, for instance, polio. Polio was eradicated, but how many of us might have died of polio had we not been vaccinated against it? And so why? What is it about being inside another human being that makes it so taboo to do something that's going to affect what happens in your life versus doing it after you're out of someone else? Like, why does that make a difference? Um, I think part of it's just because I guess what people are concerned about more with the designer children is massaging the development process earlier on, so that physically things are drastically different. Um, like for me, I mean, there's petty little kind of stupid stuff that for me, I have brown hair, brown eyes, but I have all my cousins have fair haired color. My brother is dirty blonde, and so, like, if I had children with someone who was also had brown hair, brown eyes, odds are I probably have brown eyed kids. But I like the idea of lighter eyes and lighter hair. So, to say, could you make those things that I know I'm a carrier for be expressed over the dominant instead? Can you pull those out? Um, I could see myself saying something like that. But is that a good thing to do? I don't know. I mean, heck, you could, in theory, you could push that child to be so different that they're barely recognizable as your offspring. It's not something you want. Do you want them to be linked to you? I know a lot of things that a lot of times parents want their kids to be better off than they were, and I think that's a lot of where that would come from sometimes. So a power like that can be beneficial, yeah, to weed out diseases and to make them healthier, but it also is detrimental in that it could be, like you said, Caitlin, that it just could be overused and used for the wrong reasons. So how do you check that? How do you put checks and balances on it? How do you say this is what you can use it for, this is what you can't? This also reminds me of the movie Gattaca that I saw. If I remember, it's been years since I've seen it, but if I remember right, in the movie, they know everything that's going to happen to you when you're born. They know essentially how you'll die, and also, but they can also, I think they also did like this kind of thing, like the designer baby thing, so you could change the way a child is before it's born in that future. Um, so I think the question is, the question of should we do it? How should we do it? What do we do with this power that we've made for ourselves? The question comes down to, a code of ethics. It comes down to morals. It comes down to what you believe is the right thing to do. Obviously, certain people are going to strongly oppose it, to say don't mess with what God has done. Don't mess with nature. Whatever they're going to say. Um, don't tamper in things that you don't have any business tampering in. But that's pretty much the MO of the human race. That's all we've ever done, is we tamper in areas that we have no business tampering in. I mean, that's we build all these technologies, we build all these civilizations, we change things into other things. We all the science, and technology, and medicine, and all these different things we developed we took the world around us and we made something else out of it. But then it's only when we start to turn that back on ourselves that you start to have more questions. So it really is just a thing that's a lot of questions for me. Personally, if I was given the choice, I don't see myself actually saying yes, I would want to do it. I mean, in the back of my mind, there's a part of me that said, yeah, would say yes, I'd want to do whatever I could to make sure that my child was set up for life as best as possible. But there's a part of me that, it's that voice that says that's not for me to choose. That's not for me to decide. But then that other voice comes back and says that's a stupid thought. Why isn't it for you to choose? I mean, if we can do this now, why not do it? I mean, we alter ourselves so many other ways now. So I don't know. I really don't. This is really a question that really has me stumped. I feel like this is one of the more stumping questions for me. So I can see both sides of it. I can see the appeal of it, but I can also see why people wouldn't like it. Plus, here's a thought. If you're go with me on this, but if, for instance, if people are changing their kids to be a certain way, if there's kind of this universal conception of what is healthy and good and beautiful and appealing, it kind of serves a reason. And I've done research into this, and there's a lot of kind of aesthetic sentiments that are subjective, that vary culture to culture, but there's a lot of things that are pretty universally favored. And so if everyone, or if a lot of people have this ability to change their child, and they're making these alterations in a similar fashion, how long is it going to be before we start churning out, a next generation that is like perfected, but that are so similar that they're starting to be more robotic, and we're starting to lose the diversity of our humanity. It's our flaws that makes us who we are as a human race, or this idea of humanity is this imperfection. But if we're perfecting ourselves, I feel like there's a conception of perfection that is widespread enough that eventually all of these kids that are being tampered with would start to converge into one point, into one kind of ideal of perfect humanhood. And I guess maybe that's kind of what we've been pushing to all along also. But when you get there, then what? What is that? If you just have a bunch of people that can't be improved upon, what does that do to the human experience? If you're so set up in life that you don't have to learn those lessons, like if physically, mentally, you're in such a good state that you don't have to struggle, that you don't have to go through anything negative. How does that affect your learning? How does that affect your viewpoint of the world? How does that affect your reality? Because there's certain things that we can't change, and there's certain things that we always be subjected to. There will always be a class system, so that's unavoidable. And obviously, we don't want it, but it'll always be there, because we're always making classifications in our mind. Heck, that's why the whole designer children thing is a bit of an issue. It's just because we see what we could have or what we are having, and saying this is something we don't want, or this is less favorable than something else that we've seen. This classification of existence, this tier of living, this is what we want. versus this is what we have, and there's that separation. Mentally, we all do it. And that's just one example. We do it all the time. You meet a new person, you size them up, you judge them based on what you see and what you hear. Whether or not it's accurate, you still do it. You classify them. You have to. You got to put them in a box somewhere. So what happens when everyone starts falling in the same box? Then you start to you're going to still be classifying people, but it's going to be more minute and maybe more arbitrary. Like separations. I don't know. I really don't know. It implies a lot of different things. There's a lot of things that this could affect. So I think one of the biggest things is it's unusual. It's never this kind of thing. This kind of power is unprecedented. We've never been able to affect that before. The human race has these dreams of different things that it wants to achieve, like, for instance, immortality. I actually just watched this movie, The Fountain, last night, which talks a little bit about that. We dream of these things, but we don't always reflect on what happens when we get them. In the movie, The Fountain, this guy and this woman seem to be living forever, but the one, well, I'm not gonna spoil it, but basically it's not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, it's a lot more than the movie's far more complex than that. But there's just so much more to each. There's so much more to what we want and what we think is best, what we think would be the ideal life than we realize, I think. And that if we actually had that stuff, I think that's not going to stop us from wanting something else we don't have. So just, I've said this already, but just again to summarize, if you get to that level of existence where you've been perfected before you're born, then what are you shooting for? Then what do you want? What are you going to want that you don't have at that point? Is it going to be a good thing? Is it going to be a bad thing? Is it going to push us forward? Is it not? I don't know. It's just a ton of questions for me. So we will only time will tell. We'll just wait and see what happens. I'm sure you'll start hearing more and more about it. Things are going to change. Things are going to start changing pretty quickly and pretty strangely. And very soon we're going to look around and say, what is this? What is this world we're in? It's not the world I was when I was a kid. All the old folks talk about it that way all the time. And soon that'll be us. Soon we'll be the old folks, and we'll look around and say, man, what is this? I don't understand this world anymore. If our ancestors could look at us now, they think we were wizards, and so if we could look at, our progeny, descendants years and years from now, we're going to think they're wizards or godlike or something. It's inevitable, we're always pushing towards that. So for now, there's a lot of questions, but I just know that in the end, it's going to happen. And so we'll find out. Or maybe we won't. Maybe it won't happen in our lifetime, but our descendants will find out exactly what it will affect. This is way too long. I always talk way too long. I'm sorry. I'm just going to end this here. Interesting question, and sorry I'm late. Bye.